On today's episode of Blending Bourbon, be sure to join Dixon, Dedman, and myself, David Mark Young, as we're joined by bourbon enthusiast Eric Janssen out of Indianapolis, who questions us on what you want to know.
Blending Bourbon is the podcast that takes you beyond the barrel and behind the scenes of the whiskey industry with master blenders Dixon, Dedman, and David Mark Young.
Welcome back. Another episode of Blending Bourbon. I'm Dixon Dedman of 2XO Whiskey, joined as always by the pride of Omaha and the face that launched 1,000 boy bands, Mr. Golden Chief himself, David Mark Young.
Dixon Dedman, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm going in entirely too many different directions right now, but it's good.
Lots of balls in the air, lots of good things happening.
Yeah, there's like weird parts of it, right? I mean, I spent 6 hours today getting my picture taken and having to do videos and all of that stuff, and it's just weird.
Well, you look great. I could tell you're dressed up. You got your hair and makeup done.
There was a little makeup on me earlier. I don't know if I still have it.
I could tell. Yeah. Some blush and.
I hope we didn't. I don't know. I probably look like a damn clown, circus clown. I don't know. Never. You look great. It's always fun. They come over there like, oh, you have to just. There's a little. We're getting a glare. Or we're getting a.
So was this an on-site? Somewhere in particular? Can you tell us?
Yeah, it was a school kind of restaurant bar in Lexington called Epping's, and it's kind of has this like modern but also kind of rustic look, and they chose it, and I just videos and photography for digital, social, blah blah blah. They just told me where to be and when to be there, and I went there and did it.
Bring your beautiful face and
so I got to get home. I got a podcast. I got to do,
yeah. Well,
priorities.
Yeah. Well, I'm here at the bottling plant. We've been bottling all day, yesterday, today, blending, bottling, all things, all great things. I smell like bourbon, par for the course, but, yeah, exciting. So, you know what? We have talked in the past about, engaging with our audience members, and we've had a ton of feedback. We've had a ton of volunteers.
Yeah, no, I think like 7 of the 16 listeners responded to that like call out.
That's close to 50%.
Yeah, I mean, that's called engagement.
It's overwhelming. It's an overwhelming amount.
Overwhelming engagement.
Yeah. So call to action. We threatened to go ahead and bring someone on. Someone did a random drawing of all of those that volunteered to sacrifice themselves or in their time, spend some time with us, and we found our winner. We found him. I don't know. We're going to have to put him on the spot and figure out why in the heck he wanted to come on this podcast with us. But let me introduce Eric Janssen. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you guys for having me on, and sorry for cutting you off there, David.
No problem.
I don't know
if I'm your first victim or your first big mistake in all of podcasting.
We'll see. I think this is going to be fantastic. We're excited to have you on here. Thanks for taking the time. We want to hear. That's what we've been saying, right? We want to hear from you. We want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think talking through this and a lot of this conversation comes after we've had multiple pours of whatever. But you start talking about podcasts and things you listen to or and it's kind of like, yeah, I listen to this podcast. It's cool. And it's like a couple talking heads on there just blabbing, which can be entertaining. But I know I listen to stuff all the time and I'm like, hey, I really wish I could ask somebody this, or I really wish I could say on air, yeah, David does have a great beard, or or whatever.
He does have a good beard.
He's got a good beard. I mean, it has its own stylist. But we've it's just kind of fun to open it up, chat. I get distracted just having to stare into the beautiful abyss that is the face of David Mark Young. So let's get some other action in here. And
sounds like you've had a few pours already.
I have not. I'm on a dry streak. Thank you very much.
Again, all right.
David, you do have a golden voice to go with that golden sheaf bourbon.
Oh, listen to you guys. Wow, you guys are too kind. I thank you. That's kind. But look at that beard, Eric, and that hat. I'd say I don't have enough hat on, nor do I have enough beard. I'm feeling a little envious there. But yeah, you guys. Okay, I hear what you're saying. But Eric, welcome to the podcast. What do you think? Wait, so let me ask you. Go ahead.
I'm just thankful that y'all gave me the opportunity. It's great to chat with you, David, and it's great to kind of catch up with you, Dixon.
Catch up. So, is there some history there?
Yeah. So the last time I saw Dixon was last year over Memorial Day weekend. I got to partake in what would be one of the last tastings that he hosted at the Beaumont Inn. And he happened to have a little sample bottle rolling around that day of what would eventually become the Phoenix blend from 2XO.
Wow, man, yes, you got to experience some history there. Wow.
Yes, I did.
Good for you.
And I may or may not have worn his cowboy hat.
Okay.
He definitely stole the hat for a picture, and I feel so bad because I think you realized it once it was too late how sweaty I was that day, and you had already put it on your head. And at that point, you're like, well, we've committed to this bit.
That's not me at all. I was like, what can I do to make myself look like, okay, I'll just wear this cowboy hat and go with it. Yeah.
So note to the producer, Myerton, if there's a picture out there of that,
I'm sure there is.
This is the time. We've got to.
Yeah.
I can send it in.
All right.
Sure,
yeah. So hopefully we're looking at that right now as they master and put.
That was cool. Do you remember what all did we taste in that tasting? Do you remember? I think that was the one I was kind of like, I was telling you all, I was kind of wrapping them up, and we pulled out some interesting.
You pulled
stuff,
out some hitters.
Yeah.
So from what I remember, we had a 1970 or 72 Yellowstone.
Oh, the Yellowstone. Yeah. Yeah.
You had your former brand's Dry State.
Dry State in there.
You threw some of us off with a Bullet 10-year. And boy, howdy, what else was in there? I'd have to look back at my pictures to actually see it.
Did I have that Weller Foolproof in there?
I think you might have. I can check real quick.
No, it's. I mean, that was. I just remember. It was definitely. I knew going into it. It was one of those groups that knew what they were talking about. We didn't really have to discuss. What's the difference between bourbon and whiskey or anything like that. And I was like, I'm gonna. It's one of my last go rounds. So we brought out some. We had a good time.
It was absolutely phenomenal. I wish you were still doing them, but I understand why you're not.
Well, if my life ever slows down, I've got a space to do them. It's just between everything I got to do when I'm home, and then that whole like husband and father thing, and
yeah, that's right.
So one day, there's nothing I really enjoy more than, and to be honest with you, it's cool. It's really cool to go out there with your own brands and talk about your brand and the story of your brand and that. there's something cool about tasting with people when you're just talking through a bourbon, talking through a profile, talking through an experience. There's no pressure. People don't feel pressure to say, "Hey, I really like this," when maybe they really don't. And it's just that was always kind of fun because you get kind of people's like real take on what they think when they don't feel like they have to sugarcoat their feelings on something or whatever. That was always fun.
Absolutely.
And the feedback was always interesting, and I just get a little silly and start stealing people's hats and fun stuff like that. It's always good.
So was that a pretty big group that was there?
Yeah, I think there was 10 of us, maybe a few more.
Yeah.
Okay. What's most memorable moment about that event, Eric?
One, Dixon just turning and walking out of the room after he heard I was also attached to the Adventure Club Bourbon Society out of Chicago.
Yeah. Had some good times with that group.
Yeah, we take over the Beaumont every year, and
had some really
we have a
good
good time
times with that group.
Also, one of my friends that I was there with, David, he got to play the piano in the lobby area, and he played it very well. It's a very beautiful piano. I can't remember the brand. He knows more about it than I do.
It's an 1880 something Steinway.
Wow.
There it is, Steinway.
Yeah,
David rode with me for the whole weekend. He's from New York. I'm from Indiana now. I picked him up in Louisville, and we spent that whole weekend together. So he was losing his mind about getting to play a Steinway.
Wow. That's awesome.
Hey,
Sounds like a
what
good time.
part of Indiana are you in, Eric?
I am just a little south of Indianapolis.
Okay. The 12th through the 14th, I'll be in Indianapolis.
All right.
This 12th, the
of April,
of April.
not next week.
Well,
Yeah, we're gonna do some cool stuff up there. Is it called like Table and Vine or something in Vine?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, Table and Vine.
The 13th, I'll be there from like 5 to 7, signing bottles, drinking whiskey, hanging out, that kind of thing. And then we're doing some other stuff around it. I'll if you got time, come hang out.
Oh, I got all the time.
All right. What do you got in your glass, Eric?
So, since I'm talking to two really great blenders, I've got... This is actually my first Infinity bottle.
Oh,
and
cool.
this one is going on just about 7 years now
Oh, wow.
that it's been put together. The last few things that got added to it were 12-year 101 Wild Turkey, a Bottle Your Own Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and what else was there? A good Remus pick from a store here in Indiana.
Do you kind of track that thing, like in terms of like not necessarily what's in it, but like when it's good and when it's like if you hit it one time, you're like, oh wow, like this is solid. You pull out an ounce and like set it aside, and then.
So I don't pull out an ounce. I know when it's good. And then there was one point where I left it untouched for about 6 months, and there's been nothing but bourbon and rye put into this. It turned malty, almost like a malt whiskey a little bit, and it was weird. So it's turned back to where I want it now, but I've definitely noticed what products I've added have added what characteristics to it.
So I was at a meeting at New Riff a while back, and their bar at New Riff, they've got an infinity bottle back there on the back shelf, and they kind of like, I think it's on Fridays, they kind of let people try it, but basically everything that's poured in the tasting room, when it gets down to a certain level, it just goes into this infinity bottle. And
Ooh.
I think I've tried it like 3 times, and one time it's just all rye, and the next time it is the weirdest damn thing you've ever tasted in your entire life. And it's like now I just walk in, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna need to see where the infinity bottle is. But I think they're like, it's just such a fun like concept and such a fun thing to watch and see how it changes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I've experimented with a barrel, a little 3-gallon barrel, and do the same thing. I get a bottle down to a couple pours and dump it into the barrel. And at one point, I just wasn't happy with it. I also was not keeping track of it, and there were things that were dumped in it. I mean, it's exclusively bourbon and rye, but I don't know if it was something in the oak.
You still drink it though, right? I mean,
of course,
yeah,
of course, yeah. It never, it didn't go sour. It didn't, but it went south of my preferred flavor profile.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, and then I've added stuff to it, and it's come around. So it's interesting to toy with. Yeah, I'm curious. Go ahead, Eric.
It's certainly fun. I've got another one here it was comprised of my last bit of Wild Turkey Diamond Anniversary, and now it has all of the Wild Turkey Master's Keeps, plus every single barrel product from Wild Turkey that I've owned. There's a bit of that in there.
Good.
So I'm looking. You're talking about some really good bottles. I see some Peerless, I think, back there.
Yeah.
Maybe some beers.
Yeah.
What's your collection look like? Are you a collector first of all?
No, I'm a drinker, but
you're a drinker.
The collection is right there, and it's a little of this, a little of that.
Sure.
Yeah. And there is still more whiskey up under there.
Yeah, look at that. Awesome. So what does the whiskey scene? I'm put you on the spot for a while, but would love to get some questions from you.
Absolutely.
But what's the whiskey scene look like in your area? You and I talked a little bit yesterday, and I know you mentioned your involvement in some of the local activities.
So, truthfully, the Indianapolis area whiskey scene is kind of choppy. You don't have like one main club that everybody belongs to, and you don't have one main bar that everybody seems to hang out at. It's pretty spread out. Like you've got Naptown Bourbon Club, who has a lot of great people in it, and they're mostly up on your northwest side of Indianapolis, up near Castleton and Carmel and all that. You've also got the Fisher's Bourbon Society, which is a little bit more east. And then you've also got the Indiana Bourbon Club, which I'm a board member of. We're trying to incorporate more people and trying to help consolidate and get more folks together. But like any type of ground-up grassroots movement, it takes time to really get engagement and gain traction. As for like bars and whatnot, you've pretty much got your Fountain Square, your downtown area of Indianapolis on the circle. And then you've got a few places up in that northeast corner. So you've got like Nikki Blaine's in downtown. You've got Blend Cigar Bar up on the northeast side. There's Final Third Whiskey and Cigar out in Ingalls, Indiana, where I'm usually hanging out at. Up in Ingalls, Indiana. I had to make sure I said the right thing there.
And you've got some pretty good. I know Starlight Distilleries.
Yep, they're about a 2-hour trip from me now.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
But not bad at all. Only an hour and a half. It's about the same distance for me to get to Louisville as it is for me to get to Starlight.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Well, yeah. Dixon mentioned he's got some activity in there. I've got some coming up as well, the next couple weeks, and unfortunately they don't overlap. But love to see that some of the events coming up, and
absolutely.
But yeah, appreciate sharing and some of your collection. But I'm curious, when you found out you had an opportunity to come on the podcast,
You're being punished.
You think what? what was your thought?
My first thought was, oh boy, I better not say anything too stupid today.
No, that's my job. That's
my job.
That's what I do.
We compete for that job.
I don't know. I've got a lot of good years of saying real stupid stuff. I'd like to think I'm pretty professional at it.
Yeah. So then, at some point you and I had talked, and then, but what's on your mind? Had you seen an episode and thought, kind of back to what Dixon was saying, oh man, if I, anything come to mind, questions wise, or, things that you're interested in discussing?
So I've been listening and watching since episode 3, I think. That
Okay.
one came across my Instagram feed, and I saw that you guys had it up and running. So I went back, listened to the first 2, and then I've just kept up ever since. It's always interesting to hear it from the standpoint of people who are in the industry and actively having to travel, and hearing about experiences on the road and meeting with different people and how you manage sometimes your work-life balance or just lack thereof.
Yeah.
That's probably more accurate.
I heard something interesting today. It was actually on the Bourbon Pursuit podcast. Ryan and Kenny, and they mentioned us. They mentioned Dixon and David on the Blending Bourbon podcast, and this was shortly after Ryan and I had met up, and we actually had Ryan on the podcast, so that'll be airing in the near future. But they made a comment about they've got. And Dixon, I don't know if you're aware of this. They've got Behind the Pursuit. I think it's like a little subset of, kind of quick podcasts that they do to kind of similar concept, to take a look at behind the scenes of their brand, United Pursuit Spirits. And but they said, everybody thinks it's really glamorous and, everybody's wealthy, but honestly, it's about getting kicked in the dick every day. I thought that was pretty fun, pretty spot on. But so what questions do you have, Eric?
So one of my questions would always be, I'm sure that you get asked 1,000 times, and I don't know a better way to phrase it, is when you guys go into the process of creating a new blend, whether that be for a new batch or for a new brand, are you looking to create something, or are you letting the stocks that you have at your disposal kind of dictate where it goes?
That's a good one. You want to take that one?
Sure. I'm probably not smart enough to go into it thinking this is what I'm going to create and this is how I'm going to get there. I mean, I talk about this a lot. I mean, I go back to, and it really all kind of goes back to my, growing up in the restaurant business, and that's there's a lot of funny things about the restaurant business, but if you read you read Anthony Bourdain's book, you never eat fish on Monday because it came in on Thursday and by Monday it's been there for 4 days or whatever. But when you go and you start to create, and that's whether or not it was back when I was having to prepare specials for our restaurants or whatever. I mean, you got to go look at what you got in the cooler, right? You got to go look at what you've got available to you, and I can start out with the notion of creating the spiciest, biggest, boldest, richest, strongest, whatever. But if the ingredients aren't there, the ingredients aren't there. And for me, I liken it as well as to just starting with a blank canvas. And I'm going to start with this blank canvas, and I've got this set of paint to work with, and that's what I've got. So you put to say this all the time, like you put a big green circle on the left side, and all of a sudden the right side's out of balance. So you go over there, and on the right side you put a big red square, and all of a sudden all you see is the green circle and the big red square, and there's all this white in between. And so you just kind of start adding and developing, and I think part of blending is not your ability to anybody can just keep throwing shit together and getting somewhere. Part of it is having an understanding and the confidence to say, stop. This is right. This looks right. This feels right. I think that's true. You have a lot of these people doing David does a lot of it, and we've had this conversation, a lot of finishing. And they get in their mind that I'm going to take this 6-year-old rye and I'm going to put it in this Sauterne barrel, and in 8 months it's going to be fantastic. And then what you see is that, or what people don't have the confidence to do a lot of times is to say, you know what, this is really freaking good at 5 months. Mm-hmm. Stop. Because, and that's another lesson I got a long time ago from like the old guys, I shouldn't call them the old guys, but the Jimmy Russells, the Jim Rutledges, they felt like, the path that the quality of their whiskeys took was this gradual incline. And it slowly got better and better with age until it peaked, and then it falls off a cliff. It gets over oaked and it falls off a cliff. And they, and both of them have told me a number of times, the challenge is not to wait until the very last second. The challenge is to have the confidence to say, it's time. This is ready. I'm happy with it. We need to put it in a bottle. You can't go back. You can't blend it back out. And so, for me, the very long kind of confusing answer to your question is like, it's about, working with what you have available and finding that combination to get you to a place you're confident enough to say, this is it. I'm ready. I can't do it any better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. I have a question, the follow-on question for you, Dixon, is, going into your bottling and, how solidified is your blend, is the proof at the moment of bottling, and I have a little bit of understanding and, insight what that looks like as far as when you go to bottle, but have you pivoted last minute because of, something that just was off?
I mean, we've had some like production issues where we had to change some stuff. Only a handful of times have I, and really in this, like with the Phoenix blend, I was probably 10% below the yield I expected. I just hadn't worked with these barrels long enough to know, and factoring in the fact that these barrels had been moved 4 times, and that agitation, creates a lot of, loss and things like that. And then, and that part is scary as hell. I mean, it's one thing to have a bunch of little sample bottles and make a little blend in my little lab and get happy with it, whatever. But, when you dump 125 barrels, there ain't no going back from that. The toothpaste is out of the tube at that point. It's not going back in there.
What's done is done then.
Right. And I am my own my own worst critic by a mile. So I almost when it's done, yes, I have my sample and I taste it against my test blend. It tracks. It's good. Check. You have to check it 15 times now, it feels like. But, I almost am to the point that once we bottle it, I just need to sit there and not touch it for 2 weeks. I open one, I start second guessing myself. I start saying, it just, and it's maddening. You don't sleep at night. You think, is this going to, it's nerve wracking. But I do believe that, it's a big part of it is that like confidence in yourself that you've done it right, that, that it's, you didn't just half-ass it, you didn't phone it in, and you gotta go with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing a lot of these smaller custom blends, less than 100 gallons, and I will typically, I'll have the blends locked in, get the ratios figured, okay, what barrels, and sometimes it's portions of barrels, and there's more moving parts than I realized. And then we'll get the liquid in a tank and start to proof it down. And then, we've had times where we had to pivot because for whatever reason, I don't know. I kind of get into this analysis paralysis, especially with these, and I'm kind of beating my head against the wall with some of these finishes because they're more complex than I had realized. And I've said within the last couple weeks that this is the last maple barrel finish we're going to do. This is the last port finish. This is the last, and I keep saying, I'm a purist, and I've got to get away from they're more complex. And I'm actually leaning more toward like the wine finishes, the cognac, the Armagnac, that sort of thing, versus anything sugary such as a maple syrup barrel or honey or Dixon's said this time and time again that 1 and 2 don't add up to 3, and
no.
Wow, these are mind blowing how you can mix 2 sweet finished blends together, and then all of a sudden you get this flat, dull. The sweetness is gone, and then you mess with the proof, and it's and I'm sorry I got off topic there, but I would agree with Dixon as far as coming up with a blend. It's based on what's in inventory. What spices do you have in the spice rack to be able to create that dish that you're. But admittedly, I get more samples than I have of barrels in inventory, and so I'll blend with those, and then now we've got to get some more wheat barrels or some some more something else that we don't have in inventory.
Yeah.
And, but those are for future blends down the. Always good to have stuff kind of in the queue.
Better to need it and not have it than
Right.
or have it and not need it.
Have it, not
need it and not have it.
Right.
So when you guys go about starting, are you looking at a product that maybe has a hole or a gap that you can fill in its profile, or are you looking for something that is already on its own basically very good and finding a way to accentuate certain parts or add a layer to it?
Yeah. May I?
Sure.
I'm realizing more and more what I naturally do when I'm tasting whiskey, and I didn't realize this until recently, within the last year or so, that I'm always thinking of how to make it better, no matter what I'm drinking, and or how it could be improved, and then sort of hypothesize what that might look like. Understand the blend or understand the mash bill, where it came from, the age, all the things, and then think about, okay, this is good. However, what could be done to it? And that's where I started years and years ago, was just tinkering around with some Jim Beam and Buffalo Trace, and come up using precise measurements to oh, that's good. Hey, maybe I'll call Jim Beam and tell them that I mixed their peanut butter with their chocolate and we came up with something amazing. But I do the same thing with food, and I think that's how I landed in this industry. Is kind of that's what I always wanted to do, and now that's what I get to do. But yeah, I was doing a tasting recently this week, and similar type of question, and yeah, I don't know.
For me, my getting started, whatever, 12, 15, I don't know how many years ago it was, but
a long time ago, a lot of blends ago.
I would tell you that I was blending to, and again, it's that same idea of like, the whole is not always the sum of the parts. I was blending with things that I didn't think were fantastic. I was blending things that, I looked at them as bourbons with flaws. I had very and I'm talking about in my previous life, Kentucky Owl. I mean, and especially after I got involved with Stoli and they started buying everything that came on the market, it's oftentimes a lot more volume of this stuff than I was recommending. But what I kind of took my role in my job and what my challenge was taking these things that individually, would I bottle them? Hell no. Individually, would I have put them out there and been proud of it? Not a chance. But so I took it as my, as a challenge and really, it was a path to finding that, you take these flawed things and how do you fit the pieces of this puzzle together to make them into something really special? Because on their own, they were lacking. Individually, they were more flaws than there were good qualities. And that was really what I was, how I started, especially as we grew the batches. It's like, okay, I had a shitload of these barrels and a shitload of these barrels and a shitload of these barrels. And you know what? On their own, they ain't very good, but if you find that right ratio and find out how they complement each other and maybe even mask some of the other stuff, it works. And my new venture and this new opportunity, I could bottle this stuff that I've got straight away. I mean, just straight away. And, but to me, it also means that I haven't, they're proprietary mash bills. They're exclusive to us. It doesn't taste like anything else out there on the market, but I haven't put my stamp on it. I haven't done, yes, I've monitored the maturation and moved some barrels around, but I want to be able to, Eric, when we're hanging out, I want to be able to say to you that, I did more than just buy this from some guy and put it in a bottle and say, this is mine. I double barreled this stuff. I moved it around. I aged it until I thought it was ready. I blended it with 3 other elements and blah, 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 blah. So it's, I mean, it didn't come from anywhere but this sick mind right up here, so
there are plenty of people who can buy their brand. You make your brand. That's how I've always equated it. You actually put a mark to it. You do your process. There are other brands out there that take barrels that they're simply buying from other companies, slap a new label on it, throw Grandpappy's story on the backside,
Right.
and onto the shelf it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. That's a good way to summarize it. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, the Phoenix blend is phenomenal.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you. I am equally as excited about the Innkeeper's blend that we have coming out and should be in market probably first-ish weekish of April.
So are you looking to try and do one blend a year, two blends a year?
Yeah,
Or
so
is
we'll
it
do
just kind of what dictates?
No, we'll do two of those a year. So I'm launching the
Okay.
Innkeeper's blend in April. That will have the lantern on the front of it, and that will be, and then I will start work and blending, and we will bottle the tribute blend in. I think we bottled that in August for like a September, October release. So that one actually, we did the Phoenix with the Phoenix on the front. We did the Innkeeper with the lantern on the front. We're doing the tribute blend. It has the Dedman family crest on the front.
Heck
so it'll be, and then I'll do another one. I'll do two a year in that Icon series. Later this year, we'll launch our kind of volume play. It's the oak series, so all the liquid is double oaked with heavy char American oak. To that, I'm going to add a French oak version, probably add a cognac infused oak version, but that'll be our $49.99, kind of everyday double oak product that's out there. And then the sticking point on this one is the glass, but I'm doing an all black. I've been working on this for 3 years. An all black, 2.5 years. An all black bottle with a kind of a matte black gem on the front. It's called the Gem of Kentucky. That's going to be exclusive. Those are going to be exclusively single barrels. All the double barreled high rye distillate will go into there. So that'll be our kind of limited top tier release. But that's one of the things that. There's a challenge around every corner, and right now it's finding the glass that I'm happy with. So that's kind of what we're waiting on.
So going with the black bottle, if I can ask, was some of that inspiration drawn from New Riff when they came to market a few years back with that black to clear bottle?
Yeah, I mean, I like that gradient look of that bottle. I mean, I think just generally
I'm not
speaking,
saying that you ripped them off by any measure. I'm saying you saw something and you went, yeah, that's something I want to do.
Well, I would say it's a little bit less of like I saw what they wanted to do and more about kind of what I wanted to do with 2XO. And to be honest, you said it perfectly. Like I didn't want. I've done the 100-year-old great grandfather story, like talking about what happened in 1879 and whatever, and I think American whiskey and the new brands, a lot of them are getting really bogged down in that. Like, I've got to have this old story. Like I've got to have this. We're going to use this false narrative about some mule that used to drag mash up a hill at Uncle Freddie's still in the woods, and I think that there's an opportunity for some modernity in the American whiskey space, and that's kind of why we went with something like 2XO, which is a little bit different. It's more like a symbol than it is not to say we're like Prince or whatever, but but I just I want less words on the front of the bottle and less, I just want it to have a different look and a different feel. And you see what's happening in the agave space, and they're kind of moving towards a lot of that. You look at Clase Azul and things like that, and those ceramic decanters and whatever, and they stand out, man. They just jump out at you when you walk into a bar. And
absolutely.
And that, that all black bottle with that gold 2XO across the front of it. And it just looks so different and looks so, I thought, so damn cool. But I want the bottle to be right.
I mean, especially in this marketplace, I look over at my shelf and I mean, yeah, there's a lot of unique shapes, but it's all clear glass, it's all brown liquor, and you've got a lot of red, brown, and black labels just sitting out there.
Yeah, and then if you go to the rye shelf, it's all green,
Green. Yep.
Yep. Well, gents, I'm going to start to wind this thing down, but I want to share something here that just kind of popped into our hands. It's a little.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, I've never. I mean, I really do look good in the cowboy hat. I need
You do, man.
Yeah,
You do. I was picturing it completely consuming you, but no, you look good in that.
No,
You're a cowboy.
I'm a cowboy.
You belong on
By God.
on the TV show Dallas. Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Eric.
You're welcome.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Eric, and I hope it was enjoyable for you. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to stay in touch. We look forward to seeing you out in the wild, and perhaps at some events and whatnot. And tell your friends, tell your family, and maybe we do it again sometime. But thank you so much for your support and for all the things. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, man. You let me know when you're coming back to Kentucky. We'll figure something out.
All right. I'll make sure I get up towards North Indianapolis when you come to town next month.
Good. Yeah, I'd love to see you, man.
All right. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to come on and talk. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you answering some questions.
Heck yeah.
Thank you so much. Gents, cheers. Another fun podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers. Sorry, I just water. I'm lame.